If we are to grow and change, we must begin by learning self-acceptance. If I can accept myself, my feelings, and my actions, I put myself on the side of the truth, rather than attempting to delude myself by fighting the truth. It is only from this place of self-acceptance that we can clear the road for change and plant the seeds of self-esteem. Mike Wickett has experienced firsthand the dramatic changes that come when we choose to value ourselves. He is a speaker and trainer whose wise words have helped to alter the lives of thousands of people interested in personal growth and self-fulfillment. On this issue of insight, he explains how, by letting go of blame and judgment, we create positive energy and improve our relationship to ourself and the world around us.
This is Mike Wickett, and I'm delighted to be here with you this month on Insight to share some ideas with you that have been absolutely transforming in my own life. You see, you have enormous reserves of potential that you've never tapped before. You really do. Don't take my word for it. At the UCLA Brain Research Center, the scientists there did a multi-year study of the human subconscious mind, because the scientists at UCLA wanted to determine the limits of the human mind. Well, after 2 years, they scrapped the project because they could not find the limits of the human subconscious mind. So the scientists at UCLA concluded that apparently our subconscious minds are limitless. Now, I take exception with inspirational speakers that get a little bit carried away and tell people such things as, you're unlimited, you can do anything, you can soar like an eagle, you can conquer the world, you have no limits. I don't believe that's quite true. I believe you probably have a few limitations. As an example, can you lift 5,000 pounds? Probably not. Can you run a 4-minute mile? I don't believe you can. So you see, you do have a few limitations. But based on the research at UCLA Brain Center, I'd like to suggest that you are almost unlimited, and you can do almost anything which is within the physical laws of nature that you set your mind to. So you have almost no limits, except that you are limited in one respect. You and I are totally, completely limited by our self-esteem level. If we have low self-esteem, we're extremely limited. If we have low self-esteem, we will probably have very poor, unloving relationships, and even if we can make money, we probably will not enjoy it. With high self-esteem, we become almost unlimited, because with high self-esteem, we can create wonderful, loving relationships, we can create prosperity, and with high self-esteem, we are happy on a daily basis. We're a very outer-directed society, and so much of our world is caught up with getting and having and acquiring. And so often we've looked at success as how much money we earn, the title we have on the door, the toys and the things we've been able to acquire. Well, I believe those things are valuable. To me, they're just like the frosting on the cake of life. However, it's my observation that you can get all of those things and be in tremendous pain. It's my observation that you can acquire enormous material goods and experience regular daily unhappiness. No amount of worldly goods and no amount of acclaim will ever cover up the continual daily pain and misery of low self-esteem. I want to share with you today the profound value of unconditional acceptance of self. I want to share with you what I believe is the single most empowering idea for personal happiness and well-being. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we're not happy and we're not fulfilled and we don't feel good about ourselves, then what is life all about? My path has been a self-esteem path. My path has been one from a life of pain and dysfunction and poverty and struggle and poor relationships to high self-esteem, inner happiness, peace, and a great deal of outer prosperity. And let me set the scene for you. In the late 70s, I got motivated for the very first time. I was living in one room in a farmhouse in West Bloomfield, Michigan. And on the floor was a mattress and a lamp my grandmother had given me, I was so poor. That constituted all my furniture in the world. In the driveway was a copper-colored Ford Torino, 96,000 miles, rusting out. It was like my life. It was rusting out. I had grown up in a very unhappy, dysfunctional, alcoholic home. Now, that is not a criticism of the people that raised me. It is a fact. I grew up with no self-esteem. I did not value myself. I felt like a loser. Now, when we feel like a loser, our life will tend to outpicture that. And I really struggled in life. I was fired from 3 jobs for poor performance. I had constant financial problems. I had a very difficult time forming relationships. Life wasn't working at all. Well, one day I got motivated. You know, poverty and pain will motivate you. And I decided to change my life. I read Napoleon Hill's great book, Think and Grow Rich, and that book said that we were all born to win. That book said to me that we all had tremendous untapped reserves of potential. And I decided that I would use my potential and I would do whatever it took to have my life work. I got involved in the largest training program in the world, and I built tremendous outer confidence. And I built a great deal of sales skill, and my life changed. My sales went from 400,000 to 6.5 million in 3 years. I moved out of that little room, moved into a beautiful townhouse, all new clothes, beautiful car. I was still unhappy. I had developed outer confidence. I had developed outer effectiveness. I bought things at the very best stores, and yet inside I felt so incomplete. You see, I lacked a positive relationship with myself. I heard about an extraordinary place called the Self-Esteem Institute in Cincinnati, Ohio. And when I read the literature, I knew that it was my missing piece. I knew that it was my missing ingredient. I knew with every fiber of my being that with those self-esteem values, which I had never had, because they'd never been taught to me, that I could find happiness and peace and contentment. So on a May Day in 1981, I went down for the 2-day self-esteem program conducted by Bill McGrain with his assistant, Miriam Burkhart. That weekend changed my life. It changed my life immediately. It has continued to impact on the quality of my life almost 9 years later. Of the scores of ideas that I got that weekend, only one stuck. It was an idea that was revolutionary at the time in my life because, you see, I had believed that blame was natural. And if you didn't do well, you blamed yourself and you find fault with yourself. And I had certainly believed that you judge other people, whether they're good or bad, right or wrong, positive or negative. And here's what I got from that weekend, this life-changing idea. Every human being alive, at every moment of their life, did the only thing they were capable of doing with the prevailing awareness that they had at the moment. There's no one to blame. That totally changed my thinking. I left the self-esteem weekend with the commitment to stop value judging, to stop blaming myself and everybody else. It didn't happen immediately. However, my commitment was total. And little by little by little, over these years, I have let go of value judging, and I have let go of blame, and I've let go of more value judging, and I've let go of more blame. And to the degree that I have been willing to accept myself unconditionally and accept other people unconditionally, the quality of my life has dramatically improved. About 15 years ago, I met a guy who was to become a lifelong friend. And he knew I had a burning desire to improve my life, and he said to me, you know, there's a little church on the other side of town that has Wednesday evening success classes, and I think you'd really love it. He said it's success ideas for personal growth and happiness. Why don't you come just once, and if you don't like it, I'll never mention it again. Well, I really respected him. So on a spring evening about 15 years ago, I went to a little church on the Lower West Side of Detroit, Michigan. And there was a marvelous speaker there, and his name was Jack Boland. They had a little congregation, about 350 people, and the place was packed. And I walked in and felt the warmest, friendliest feeling that I had ever felt in any environment in my whole life. The people were very loving and very supportive and very kind. I started to go every single Wednesday. Well, downstairs at that little church, they had a fellowship hall. They sold books, they sold posters, and they had coffee and cookies and juice. And it was really a pleasure to go down and meet the people and make new friends. The church grew by leaps and bounds. And in a very short time, they didn't have enough coffee in Fellowship Hall for all the people who wanted to drink coffee. So what they did was they pooled their money. and they ordered a brand new, huge, deluxe coffee maker that would make several hundred cups of coffee. Well, a couple of months went by, and that new coffee maker arrived, and everybody was all excited for the first time to go down and see it and have plenty of coffee for everybody, and an amazing thing happened. The new coffee maker did not work. They fooled with it, and they fiddled with it, and they simply could not get it to make coffee. Finally, in desperation, they sent upstairs for an electrician that worked in the building. He came down, took one look at the coffee maker. In virtually an instant, he said, "I think I see your problem." And a group of people said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "Well, isn't the building wired for 110 volts? And they said, "Yes." He said, "This coffee maker's wired for 220. And as most of us know, 220 volts will not operate on 110. Ladies and gentlemen, every one of us came into this world wired for 220 volts. We were designed to work. However, if we operate on 110 volt concepts, it short circuits our power. There's a couple of ways to examine an issue, and one of the ways is to examine the opposite of it. So I want to examine the opposite of high self-esteem. I want to examine the opposite of affirming self-esteem values. I want to look at some of the things we might be doing that are 110 volt ideas that short circuit our personal power, short circuit our possibilities, and short circuit our happiness. And the first 110 volt short circuiting concept I'd like to talk about is comparison. Now, we live in a very outer directed society, and we hear a great deal about the importance of a good self-image. Let's remember that self-image is how you look. I'm not so sure that self-image is as powerful and as significant as it's been made out to be. Let's look at that. Number one, when you and I are functioning from self-image, the first thing we do is compare ourselves to other people. How do we look? How do we shape up compared to how other people think and act and behave? When you compare yourself to other people, you'll win some, and then inevitably you will lose some. And you'll always be on edge wondering, how do I look? How do I compare? How do I stack up? And I want to suggest to you that comparison short circuits our personal power and our self-worth. There's an expression in our society called keeping up with the Joneses. We got a little button in our office that says, just when you catch up with the Joneses, they refinance. My beautiful friend, you're going to be a whole lot happier if you let go of comparison. The next thing that happens when you're involved in comparison is, when you don't do so well, you tend to blame yourself, find fault with yourself, value judge yourself. The thing that kills self-esteem, the thing that kills personal power, the thing that kills human energy is value judging and blame. I want to remind you that every human being alive, including you, including me, including the people that raised us, including anyone who's ever been a part of our life, including our spouse, our children, our former spouse, and even our former spouse's attorney, did the very best they could at every moment of their life with their prevailing awareness they had at the moment. Now, I want to give it to you straight, my friend. Value judging is insanity. Blame is insanity. Because blame and value judging says, I should have done better or they should have done better. And that is an impossibility. It makes no sense to blame and value judge, not to mention how it destroys the quality of our life. Life is about choices. Albert Camus, the great French philosopher, once said that our life is the sum of all of our choices. If you and I choose to value judge ourselves, we choose to beat up on ourselves, if we choose to blame ourselves, or if we choose to do any of that to other people, there's a payoff. Because the payoff for comparison and value judging is pain with a capital P. It's pain every day. It's pain that never goes away. It's pain that you and I are stuck with. You see, criticism and blame are like glue, and they stick to you. And if we choose to blame and value judge, then we are stuck with the continual, painful consequences of all of that. The way that we are feeling on a regular basis attracts the people that come into our life. You see, life is a perfect mirror reflection of our inner state. Another way to say it is, life is a perfect mirror reflection of the state of our self-esteem. Now, since we always attract at the level we're at, ask yourself a question. When you're blaming, when you're comparing, when you're fault-finding, what kind of feelings are going on? They're not real pleasant. Now, when you and I are in pain, and we're feeling bad, we're feeling like losers, what are we going to attract? You think we're going to attract loving people? Not a chance. You think we're going to attract prosperous new opportunities? No way in the world. You think we're going to attract lots of respect from different people? Can't happen, because we always attract at the level we're at. So you see, in addition to the painful payoff of comparison and blame, there is the continual experience of being stuck right where you are. And if you want to move forward off the spot, and if you want your life to change, and if you want your world to come alive, then I invite you for all time to stop comparison, stop value judging, and get rid of blame. It is useless, and it has dire consequences. You and I came into this world wired for 220 volts of pure energy. So let's talk about some 220 volt concepts. The very first 220 volt concept is acceptance. We enhance our personal power when we unconditionally accept ourselves as a person of worth and value just the way we are. And the key to acceptance is separating your behavior and your results from your worth and value. You see, with high self-esteem, we love ourselves because we exist, not because of our accomplishments. Now, our outer-directed society has coined some interesting phrases like winners and losers. I want to suggest to you right away, there are no losers. There are people that perform at higher levels than others, but there are no losers, because everyone was created with wonderful worth and value. Didn't all of us come into the world as a beautiful, little, perfect child who was a wonderful miracle? And does a person's outer results or career achievements change that? I don't think so. I think we're all winners. We all started out life as a beautiful miracle, and if you and I are going to be happy and fulfilled, we're going to have to see ourselves that way today. We're going to have to see ourselves as a wonderful creation. The quality of our life, my friend, comes from whether or not we value ourselves as a very special, worthy, unique human being. And that is what I mean by unconditional acceptance of yourself. It is the very first principle to having a high self-esteem affirming lifestyle. The second 220 volt concept I'd like to talk about is the fantastic power of no blame, no value judging. You see, with high self-esteem, you take total responsibility for everything in your life. With high self-esteem, you own it all. You own your career results, your financial results, your health results, and the results of all of your relationships. With high self-esteem, you realize there's no good breaks and there's no bad breaks. There's just the perfect law of cause and effect. And everything in our life, whether it's positive or negative, has something to do with us, or it wouldn't be in our life. Now, with high self-esteem, you take responsibility for everything is there, but you do not put yourself down. You don't find fault with yourself, and you don't blame or beat up on yourself. Value judging is saying, I should have done this, and I should have done that, and they should have done this, and they should have done that, and they're bad, and they're negative, and they're this, and they're that. That's all value judging. By the way, I need to remind you that all blame is self-blame. And so whenever we're blaming another person, we're really blaming and tearing down ourselves. If we're going to live at a high level, if we're going to be happy and empowered and fulfilled and alive, it means no value judging, even though it is challenging for all of us. And if we have made some unwise choices, let's pay attention, let's learn the lesson, and let's choose differently without value judging ourselves. Blame and value judging is an old 110 volt concept that will short circuit the power in your life. About a year ago, I was having dinner with a dear friend of mine, and she invited her daughter Mary along. And Mary is in her mid-30s, in the midst of a second marriage, very unhappy, was getting ready to file for divorce. She had never had a very positive relationship with her father. It seemed that she had been raised in an emotionally abusive environment, and her parents were not happily married, and As a child, she was not very happy, and all of her life she had blamed her father. She had value judged him as a bad or poor father. Now, we said earlier that value judging creates pain. So here we have Mary in her 30s. The first marriage didn't work. The second marriage is not working out. And I said, Mary, are you aware that the results of your relationships, especially close relationships like marriage, are perfect mirror reflections of your esteem level? She said, what do you mean? I said, Mary, we have difficulties in our relationships when we're incomplete in our self-esteem. And we become incomplete in our self-esteem when we blame or value judge ourselves or other people. I said, Mary, would you like my support? She said, yes, Michael, I would. I said, Mary, to tell it straight out, you're never going to have a fulfilling, loving relationship until you make peace with your father. If you and I have a grudge against anybody, it's going to come out in all of our relationships. I'm not saying it's bad. The consequences are just devastating. She said, what could I do? I said, Mary, this is a real special gift you give to yourself. You don't do it for your dad. You do it for you. And what you do, Mary, is you get off it. You realize that maybe he created a lot of chaos, and maybe he created a lot of pain, and maybe he didn't give you enough love. But the truth of the matter, Mary, is that he did the best he could, and the only thing he was capable of doing with the prevailing awareness he had at the time. I said, now, Mary, high self-esteem requires that we stop blaming and let go of value judging. And you accept your father as a person of worth and value, even though his behavior may have been unpleasant. Every person has worth and value. Sometimes the behavior isn't so great. I said, Mary, it's up to you. But I said, I'll promise you, based on everything I know about life and have learned in the last 14 years, that if you continue to blame your dad, you will be in the pits of despair. None of your relationships will work. You can get rid of this man, and you can get another one, and you'll have the same darn experience again and again. And she said, you know, I really do understand that. She said, I really do want to clean up my life. She got involved in a self-esteem program that I recommended. As a result of that, she began to let go of all judgment of how her father should have been and how he shouldn't have been. As a matter of fact, she saw him several months later. And she looked him right in the eye and she said, Dad, I want you to know, I don't hate you anymore. Well, he was flabbergasted. He did not know what to say. She said, Dad, I don't blame you anymore. Mary's life changed almost overnight. What I didn't tell you was, about a year ago when I had dinner with her, she looked like a person who was dying. She looked old. Her pain was all over her. I saw Mary 4 weeks ago. She looked so radiant and so beautiful, I didn't even recognize her. She didn't even look like the same person. She's happy. She's fulfilled. Instead of running to a divorce attorney, she's going for counseling to see what she can do to work it out with her husband. She's no longer value judging her husband either, because for years she had said he should be this way and he shouldn't be that way. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Mary started to operate at 220 volts. And when we're operating at 220 volts, meaning when we're coming from acceptance, our lives work at a much higher level. Now, there's a payoff for everything. We said earlier that the payoff for living at 110 volts, the payoff for comparison, value judging, and blame was pain, and you get to have it every day. The good news is there's a payoff for unconditional acceptance. There's a beautiful payoff for accepting yourself, and the payoff is freedom, as in freedom and joy and happiness and just being the beautiful, worthy, fulfilled person you were created to be. So what do you choose? You want to be in pain? You want to be free? You want to feel stressed out and unhappy every day, or you want to feel happy and alive? I want to remind you that happiness is not some place you get to eventually. Dr. Wayne Dyer makes an interesting point. You know, there's a saying in our society that says today could be the first day of the rest of your life. And Wayne Dyer says yes, and today could be the last day of your life. So I want to suggest to you there's no future time when you're going to be happy. Happiness is today. Happiness comes from acceptance, from valuing and respecting yourself. Now, you and I know that this message means nothing unless you act on it. So as we wind down, I want to give you some simple action steps that you can use to empower your life be happier, and get better outcomes. Number one, take a 3x5 card or a 4x6 card and print very large 3 letters, T period, U period, A period. And put it up on your wall, your mirror, somewhere where you'll see it every single day. Because as you know, that stands for total, unconditional acceptance. It'll remind you to always accept yourself as a person of worth and value regardless of what your behavior is. Number two, there's a couple of ways you change your life. One is by putting in new information. The other is by letting go of old stuff. It is easily the most powerful to let go of old stuff. So the second suggestion I have is make a forgiveness list. A specific forgiveness list, letting go of all blame and anger and value judging about yourself and every other person. And the way that you do it is this. I now forgive you, Mother, for being critical. I now forgive you, Dad, for abandoning the family. I now forgive you, Michael, for creating debts. You write your name or the name of the person and the specific thing you want to let go of, and you write it again and again and again until you feel really peaceful about yourself or the other person. It will totally transform your life. Third idea, take 2 sheets of 8.5 by 11 paper and write 2 different things. On one, write, there are no shoulds. I've got a beautiful friend named Betsy Bradbury that's one of the most peaceful people I've ever known, and that's her philosophy, and I've adopted that, and it's on the wall in my office. On another sheet of paper in my office right next to it, it says, let everybody be. To remind myself that I don't want to be the general manager of the universe anymore. I don't want to scrutinize people. I don't want to find fault with them. I want to let them be who they are, and I want to take care of my own business. And life works much better that way. Number 4, there's an extraordinary 6-cassette album called The Psychology of High Self-Esteem by Dr. Nathaniel Branden. It is available from the Nightingale Conant Corporation. It is filled with some extraordinary exercises and ideas on how to practice unconditional acceptance of yourself, your feelings, and your behavior. Some of those ideas on that album have been life-changing for me. I strongly recommend that you invest in it. Finally, number 5, I want to give you a gift that was the most transforming, empowering experience of my life. I want to tell you about the Self-Esteem Institute in Cincinnati, Ohio. I believe they are doing the most powerful work on earth in their weekend program. They're giving people the tools to build an affirming, high self-esteem lifestyle. They're giving people the tools for being happy, being alive, being empowered, and for getting outstanding outcomes. The Self-Esteem Institute is an extraordinary experience. I would encourage you to look into it. It is a very precious gift that I share with you that you could give to yourself. My beautiful friend, you came into the world just like I did as an unlimited person with a total capability to be happy, to be fulfilled, and to have your whole life work. That really doesn't mean anything if we live by 110-volt concepts like blame and value judging and comparison that short circuits our personal power. It means everything if we practice 220-volt concepts like acceptance and valuing ourselves and respecting ourselves. With every fiber of my being, I reach out to you and encourage you to create a high self-esteem affirming lifestyle. All of that wonderful love that you create inside of yourself that you can then give to the world and give to the people close to you, family and friends. There's no happiness in the future. There's no success in the future. It's all right now. I support you for a wonderful life filled with high self-esteem and the realization of all your special dreams. Thank you.
That was Mike Wickett on expanding personal power through unconditional acceptance. This is Steve King. Join us next month for another edition of Insight. And now please fast forward this cassette to the end to hear Leo Biscaglia and Earl Nightingale on side 1.